sacred mountain no one is allowed to climb, with a temple said to hold incredible secrets at its base. Mount Kailash in Tibet is one of the most mysterious and sacred mountains in the world. It's considered the spiritual center of the universe by Hindus and Buddhists. In fact, it's so sacred that no one is allowed to climb it. The locals firmly believe that attempting to scale it would bring bad luck or even total disaster. There's also a temple at the base of the mountain which is said to hide all sorts of secrets. As for what those secrets could be, ancient artifacts, powerful relics, who knows, but some say it's all buried underneath. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know because no one's allowed to go searching for it. The Tibetans hold it in such high regard that they've kept the area mostly off limits for centuries. It's much more than an archaeological site, it's a forbidden zone that explorers and historians can only dream of digging into. Moving on to the Mogao grottos in China, which are literally full of ancient art that dates back over 1,000 years. These caves are a time capsule filled with statues, murals, and scrolls shedding a lot of light on the history of Buddhism. The cave complex has over 700 caves, and a lot of them are carved into the cliffside and feature art depicting centuries of religious history. And yes, you can visit parts of this site, but some of these caves are completely off limits. And why is that? Well, because they're delicate. Some of the artwork in there is extremely fragile, and one thing people are just great at is ruining things. Too many mouth-breathing tourists start trudging through the place, and before you know it, there's Cheeto stains on the 1,000-year-old Buddha statue. Some of the caves have actually been sealed shut, and even some of the researchers who studied the site haven't had access to them. There's a lot we don't know about what's hidden deep inside the caves. What if it's not just fragile stuff though? What if there could be more? Now we're talking about something that's a little more modern, but still totally forbidden: the Vatican's secret archives. If you didn't know, the Vatican has an enormous collection of ancient documents, manuscripts, and records that go back hundreds, even thousands of years. Things that are either so important or rare that they're kept locked up in an area of the Vatican that most people can't even get close to. The archives aren't just secret in the sense of having stuff hidden away. This is a literal vault where even some of the most famous historians and scholars can only access documents after being vetted and approved by the Vatican itself. And I gotta believe there's someone breathing down their neck when they're in there too. Some pieces of history have been made public over time, but a lot of what's in the archives are still heavily guarded. Who knows what's in there? Let your imagination run wild. Some think that documents related to the early church, lost historical accounts, or details about some of the more controversial events in history could be locked away in there. But unless you become Pope one day, you'll probably never get the chance to find out. And I'm not exaggerating. Some historians have spent years trying to get permission to just crack open a handful of files. Next up, we have China's famous Terracotta Army. You've probably heard of this, the thousands of life-size statues built to guard the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. We've all seen images, we've all heard stories, but the emperor's tomb has never actually been excavated. It's been sealed for thousands of years, and while researchers have examined the army, they've never actually gotten to look inside the burial chamber of the emperor himself. The tomb is said to be packed with treasure though, and historical artifacts. Who knows what else? But here's why we still can't get in. There are a couple reasons. For one, there's fear it could be damaged. The tomb is said to be full of mercury, which was thought to protect the emperor in the afterlife, so excavating it could cause chemical reactions that would completely ruin the site. In fact, when they've dug around, they've found signs of dangerous mercury levels. And then there's the fear of booby traps. Legend has it that the emperor rigged up all these deadly traps so that his tomb wouldn't be disturbed, and some archaeologists still fear that some of these traps may be active. So even though we're all dying to know what's inside, it's not happening, at least not anytime soon. I always love saying this one, Sacsayhuaman. No, I'm not talking to the female members of the audience, although I'm sure you're all lovely. Sacsayhuaman is a stone structure that sits above Cusco, Peru. It's said to be one of the most amazing examples of Inca engineering. The site's made up of these huge stones, some weighing over several tons, fitted together so perfectly you can't slip a piece of paper between them, and we don't really know how the Incas moved these massive stones and placed them so perfectly like that. Some people believe there's still more buried at the site that hasn't been uncovered. Archaeologists have spent years studying it, but there are sections that are completely off limits. Some of the surrounding areas are sacred to the local people, and authorities have restricted access to these spots. One restricted area is called Chinkana, a long underground cave said to connect the fortress to the Temple of the Sun. But it's also possible there's some other stuff hidden beneath the earth that no one's dug up yet. Could there be more ancient tunnels or artifacts from lost civilizations that lived even before the Incas? Well, unless more excavation is ever allowed, we'll never really know.
At number 5, Cedar Grove Cemetery. The Cedar Grove Cemetery, located in New Bern, was established in 1800 in response to the yellow fever epidemic, already starting off strong in the creepy department. Apparently, during the epidemic, so many people passed that at night trenches were dug in the churchyard in a line near the adjoining property, and the bodies were buried there indiscriminately. That sounds like the perfect recipe for a lot of forgotten and angry spirits looking for revenge. Then, after 1802, the cemetery became the major New Bern burial ground. Now the cemetery holds North Carolina's most influential citizens from the 19th and 20th century. The thing Cedar Grove may be best known for is the looming black entrance arch. Legend has it that if the arch weeps or bleeds its sticky rust-colored ooze, I have to add that is how it was described in the article I read, and I mean, what a description. If you get oozed on by the arch, apparently you will soon be the one needing a spot to be buried. I don't know what the sticky rust-colored ooze could be coming from a stone arch, other than some powerful supernatural stuff, so I think I'll definitely never be going there ever at all. At number 4, the Grove Park Inn. Considered the frightful jewel of the haunted Asheville, North Carolina, the Grove Park Inn has one guest that requires no checkout. The most famous apparition is called the Pink Lady. Although the ghost remains unidentified, it's believed that she was a young woman who fell 5 stories from room 545 to the Palm Court atrium back in 1920. According to the many stories of guests encountering the Pink Lady, it seems to me she's not a shy girl. One contractor who was repairing the room felt a presence. This gave him the chills, but his last straw was when he felt a tugging on his ear. Apparently he ran out of the room scared and never returned. Now that construction worker knows what's up. Any character in a horror movie needs to be more like him. Since then, many guests have reported encounters with the Pink Lady, most of which involve being touched by her. Oh, so the Grove Park Inn can quite literally make my nightmares come true. The general consensus seems to be that she is gentle, but I don't know, gentle or not, she's still a ghost touching me. Number 3, the Biltmore Estate. After a young George Washington Vanderbilt visited Asheville, North Carolina, his mother fell in love with the surrounding mountains. The historic estate was then built in the late 1800s on approximately 125,000 acres of land purchased by Vanderbilt. He established an impressive art and artifact collection and a library full of rare editions. In 1914 he passed, and his grandsons immediately inherited the estate, which they then turned into a tourist attraction. During his life, Vanderbilt loved to spend time in his Biltmore library when storms rolled in, and apparently he continues to enjoy it in his afterlife. Visitors of the estate have reported seeing a shadowy figure in the room when the weather turns gloomy. Even as a ghost, he still had style. Only coming out in the gloomy weather adds to the spookiness of it all. He's not the only one who still enjoys the house. The ghost of his wife Edith is also known to visit her husband there, with many guests reporting hearing her whisper George. Staff members have also said that the Biltmore Library is one of the most haunted places in all of North Carolina. They've heard eerie sounds of a party with clinking glasses, laughter, and echoing music. I personally try to avoid ghost parties, but it's good to know where not to go. Number 2, Chhish Hole. This haunted spot is located in the Outer Banks of North Carolina on Ocracoke Island, which is riddled with spooky stories. The most famous one, however, is Chhish Hole. Ocracoke Island was the home and the final resting place, kind of the pirate Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach. He was known as a great intimidator, leading people to raise their white flags just at the sight of him. Teach did eventually hang up his pirate hat and pledge allegiance to the Queen, but in 1718 he was beheaded by Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the British Royal Navy. Maynard was sent by the governor of Virginia, who was not convinced the famous pirate was really willing to give up the criminal lifestyle. Now it is said that Blackbeard haunts the land near where his body was tossed into the sea, also known as the Point. People have reported seeing Blackbeard pacing the shoreline looking for his missing head. ahead. And at number 1, Lydia's Bridge. Every article I read about Lydia's Bridge started out with, if you grew up in Jamestown, you know the story of Lydia. After reading the story, yeah, how could you not know about it? It's horrifying. So the story goes that a pretty hitchhiker in a white dress flags drivers down near the old Jamestown Bridge and then asks for a ride. Now the first time I read this, I thought it was the lore of how the woman passed, but no, the hitchhiker that asks for a ride is the ghost. Apparently she quietly gets into their cars, tells them to take her home, and then vanishes. Are you kidding me? If I picked up a hitchhiker that turned out to be a ghost, I'd be out. Absolutely not. The spirit known as Lydia has been spotted on rainy, foggy nights as she walks alone or stands beside the road searching for help. The ghost is believed to be that of a young woman who passed away in a tragic car accident at the bridge many decades ago. The most commonly told story of Lydia's passing is that the fatal car accident occurred when a boy and a girl drove to a dance, maybe even the prom, on a rainy night. But sorry Lydia, I don't have room for another passenger.
Coming in at number 10 is Tsingy de Bemaraha. Located on the very western edge of Madagascar, an island off the coast of southern Africa, this national park is centered around two large geographical features called Great Tsingy and Little Tsingy. These rock formations are plateaus, which have had deep ruts cut into them by the groundwater to the point of making them completely unable to be traveled or walked upon. The word Tsingy, when translated, even means where one cannot walk barefoot, making it the perfect name for this incredibly unique area of the world. Because of the vast area in which these formations are located, the park was made unexplorable simply because of the fact that it is impossible to cross over the jagged plateaus. And let me just say, I wouldn't even want to try to walk through there. Number 9. Mars. Humans have always dreamed about going and creating life on Mars, and they're trying to make that a reality. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, has long predicted that humans will land on Mars by 2029, but there are some huge challenges when trying to do that. The biggest challenge to go to Mars is the time duration to go there and come back. The window for launch to Mars from Earth only happens approximately every 2 years and 2 months. This means astronauts leaving in 2024 wouldn't be able to get help before 2026 when the next launch window opens and help gets there after the 9-month journey. Now the other hard part of going to Mars is the landing. Under Elon's plan, your spaceship would be approaching Mars at 62,000 miles per hour. As it descends into the atmosphere, the ship would then use supersonic retropropulsion, aka lots of little rockets firing at once, in order to land on the surface of Mars. Now this landing maneuver is risky because Mars's atmosphere is so much thinner than Earth's, so there's less friction to slow you down. NASA has struggled to land even small robots on the surface. The system used to decelerate and then parachute the Curiosity rover on Mars was mind-boggling, and Curiosity only weighed 1 ton, and Elon is envisioning 450 tons. Plenty could go wrong, like an explosion. Now it's also said that Mars wouldn't be an ideal place to live as there's radiation exposure, there's low sources of energy, and we can't grow food there, and so much more. Will we ever make it to Mars? Who knows, but we sure won't be living there anytime soon. Number 8. North Sentinel Island. This small island lies in the Bay of Bengal between the southern coasts of India and Thailand, making it extremely remote. Its inhabitants, called the Sentinelese people, are the only human beings who have ever lived on the island and have long since refused to accept modern visitors. Anyone who comes to the island to try and explore or study the area is immediately rejected, oftentimes with violence. The Sentinelese tribe have existed on the island for more than 50,000 years as per the protection given by the Indian government. The island is forbidden for any visitors of any kind. Now throughout history, encounters with the population have been met with violence, as in 2006 the tribe ended the lives of 2 fishermen whose boat had been dragged by the current on their shores. Then in 2018, John Allen Cho, who is reported to be a Christian preacher and a US citizen, was shot dead by them after he illegally entered the prohibited area with the help of local fishermen. Now according to The Guardian, a 3-mile restriction zone prevents visitors from entering the territory. Due to all this, the Indian government has abandoned any plans to contact the Sentinels. The entire tribe could be wiped out by diseases to which they have no immunity, which is why authorities respect their wish to remain uncontacted. Because of this, the island exists completely out of touch with the rest of the modern world, and it's basically completely unexplored. Number 7. Namib Desert. This desert, located along the Atlantic coasts of Angola, Namibia, and South Africa, stretches for more than 1,200 miles and is one of the driest places in the entire world. In some parts, the desert only sees 2 millimeters of water for the entire year, which means that it's basically impossible for anything to survive. And the few living things that do live must do it with the most minimal amount of water possible. Near the coast, this desert consists mostly of giant sand seas that span hundreds of miles. Any living thing that gets left or lost in the areas would never be able to live without a rescue. In less arid areas, there are indigenous people who manage to survive, but for the most part, it is only home to invertebrates like scorpions and other small animals that can live with almost no water. Safe to say, no humans can survive there. Number 6. Vale du Javari. In recent decades, the world has seen less and less of people who still manage to remain out of touch with modern day technology and civilization, but the few indigenous people left, the Vale du Javari is home to 14 different groups of them. With more than 3,000 individual indigenous people belonging to 14 different tribes, the Brazilian government has prohibited people from entering the area in order to preserve the native people and their traditions. This 32,990 square mile area is bigger than the entire country of Austria. The area, along with its inhabitants, is observed by the government from the air. Now, on June 4, 2022, 2 journalists went missing from the Icota River in the Vale du Javari region in the extreme west of the Amazon on the border with Peru. On June 14, 2022, their bodies were found, and the Brazilian president said something wicked was done to them, and this is why the area is prohibited.
The Library of Alexandria was once one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. Scrolls from all over the world filled with knowledge from the greatest minds of the time. But as legend has it, the library was destroyed in a series of disasters. All that knowledge just poof, vanished. Some people believe that there might still be remnants of the library buried beneath the streets of Alexandria, but since the original site was destroyed, digging there is no easy feat. Archaeologists can't just go around tearing up city blocks looking for ancient scrolls, as much as I'm sure they'd love to. Because Egypt is protective of its historical sites, it's nearly impossible for any expert to get permission to dig in the exact spots where the library might have been. But the idea that there's this entire lost collection of scrolls containing the wisdom of ancient civilizations just waiting to be found is a pretty fun idea and would make for a great Indiana Jones movie. Alright, now we're heading into real conspiracy theory territory, Antarctica. Yes, I am talking about pretty much the entire continent. Is it weird to call Antarctica an archaeological site? Maybe, but so much of it is unexplored and off limits. You also have a surprising amount of people who believe that ancient civilizations once existed there long before it froze over. Some explorers have claimed to find evidence of ancient structures buried beneath the ice, but again, Antarctica is mostly off limits to outsiders. Only certain countries are allowed to explore it, and even then, they can only study certain parts of the continent. The global treaty that governs the exploration of Antarctica has strict rules about what can and can't be explored, and there's been very little effort to dig deeper into these quote-unquote mysteries. Some also say there's stuff like hidden technology and pyramids beneath the ice, but because of the restrictions, it's hard to know for sure. Scientists seem to be more focused on studying the environment there, so it's going to take a lot to convince anyone to actually go digging for ancient civilizations, unless that hasn't already been going on and things aren't being covered up. The Bosnian pyramids are pretty controversial. Now I know what you're probably thinking, what do you mean pyramids in Bosnia? Well, some people believe that this set of mountains are actually man-made pyramids. Supposedly, if these pyramids really do exist, they're ancient, older than the Egyptian ones, and contain mysteries that could change our understanding of human history. Of course, the scientific community is pretty split on whether or not these pyramids are actually a thing. Some say they're just natural rock formations. Others insist they're evidence of some ancient construction. All the same, the site is mostly off limits for mainstream excavation. Local authorities have kept the area restricted, and there are some serious debates over whether or not it should be explored. Some argue that the whole thing could be an elaborate hoax, but either way, the site is basically forbidden for archaeologists. Mount Shasta in California is obviously gorgeous, but there's said to be a laundry list of weird things about it. The mountain's been tied to all sorts of strange legends. Supposedly, there's a lost civilization that lives deep beneath it. There have been lots of UFO sightings, and while locals might share their own theories, about what's beneath the surface, access to Mount Shasta is strictly controlled. People claim there are these hidden caverns and ancient structures inside the mountain, but so far, no one's been allowed to explore the mountain's more remote areas. There's also a deep spiritual significance for Native American tribes in the area, which has led to even more restrictions on excavation. But before you go yelling at me in the comments about how you've been here before, so it's not off limits, yes, people are free to hike a lot of the area, but getting anywhere near the more mysterious parts of it, not so much. Finally, we have the Cave of Mummies in Guanajuato, Mexico. This cave is home to some of the best preserved mummies you'll ever see. The mummies were naturally preserved in the cave's dry environment, and a lot of them look eerily lifelike. Sounds weird to say lifelike when they are indeed corpses of actual people, but I mean, some of them almost look like they'll just open their eyes and start walking away. Archaeologists have been allowed to study the mummies, but there's a catch. Only a select few have been able to go inside the actual cave. Many parts of the site are restricted because of how delicate the mummies are, but it's not just the mummies that are interesting, it's also the cave itself. Some think there may be more bodies hidden deeper inside the cave that haven't been uncovered yet, so what else could be lurking in the darkness? Well, unless you get special access, you'll never know.
Coming in at number 10, the Devil's Tramping Ground. This scary site is located about 10 miles from Siler City in Chatham County, North Carolina. The Devil's Tramping Ground is a strange footpath that forms a circle 40 feet in diameter. Locals claim that this is where Satan himself walks to contemplate his evil deeds. The path is completely free of vegetation, and the only thing that will grow inside the ring is tough clumps of grass. Apparently, even sticks left in the pathway are cleared away by the following morning. There are a few other stories of where the circle may have come from. Some folks claim that the area was a meeting for Cherokee people who made the circle bear with dances. Others link the site to the lost colony of Roanoke, and scientists have tried to explain it as being a former molasses mill. Whatever you think may be the case, visitors have claimed to see red glowing eyes in the circle. If that doesn't sound evil, I don't know what else could. If it is the devil's place to think, he sure does do a lot of thinking. I wonder why this spot in particular. There is a scenic byway named Devil's Tramping Ground Road, and it's free to travel, but the actual site is currently located on private property. Number 9, Paint Rock. You can find this location near the Tennessee border and the small town of Hot Springs. Paint Rock is considered one of the most haunted places in North Carolina. It has been a landmark for eons, and it features one of the best examples of Native American pictographs in the state. There is a figure of a lone Cherokee man that has been seen walking through the forest near Paint Rock, but that's not the scary part. What makes this one of the most haunted places is more about the famous body of water it overlooks. Legend has it that singing maidens there have lured many men to their demise. These maidens sound like something straight out of Harry Potter, and I'd love to know what it is that lured the men in. Do we think they sang, gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, or did they just put these unlucky men into a trance? So many things I'd love to know about the maidens without going anywhere near the water. You can still visit Paint Rock today and check out the Native American history, but I think I'll stick to Google Images personally. Number 8, Demon Dog. Located in the small Blue Ridge mountain town of Vale Criscus, which is Latin for Valley of the Cross, because the town has two streams that meet at right angles in the middle of the valley. Close by, there's an old stone church that sits near Highway 184. According to the legend, if you drive past the church's graveyard at night, of course it's at night, a black dog will jump out from behind a gravestone and start chasing your car. I don't know about you all, but for me, being chased is immediately 100 times scarier. Apparently, no matter how fast you drive, the dog will keep pace. There are many stories of people being chased by the dog. In some, it has red eyes, in other, it has yellow, but the thing that remains the same in every story is that the only way to get the dog to stop chasing you is if you cross the bridge nearby where the two streams cross. This is not an official tourist attraction like some others on the list, but the cemetery is free to visit in case you wanted to test out the story yourself. At number 7, the Duke Mansion. This terrifying site is located in Charlotte's Myers Park neighborhood. The Duke Mansion was built in 1915 as the home for James Duke of Duke University and Duke Energy. However, the property was briefly owned by John Avery in the 1920s, which is when the paranormal happening reportedly began. The story starts after Avery's wife was hospitalized for severe mental health issues. The lonely John began renting a room to a young writer, Maggie, who he, shocker, her, ended up falling in love with. However, Avery refused to leave his wife, resulting in Maggie to break off their affair. Before Maggie left, Avery was able to get her to promise to meet him at the home 1 year later, dead or alive. So a year later, Maggie showed up and waited until it was almost midnight when a flash of lightning illuminated a figure of a man watching her from the window, so Maggie rushed in the door. The house appeared to be empty, but she made her way to the library. Just as the clock struck 12, she heard footsteps on the staircase and Avery appeared just in time. As the two reached out for one another, his hand went right through hers. Avery then said, dead or alive. It turned out that Avery had actually passed a few days earlier, and a letter revealed him worried if he would be able to make it to the meeting. Very cute, but still super haunted. Number 6. The Great Dismal Swamp. Just with the name alone, you know this place isn't going to have a nice backstory. The Great Dismal Swamp encompasses more than 100,000 acres straddling the boundary of North Carolina and Virginia. It was home to Native Americans over 13,000 years ago, and George Washington tried to convert the wetlands into farmlands. Though pretty, the swamp is dangerous and spooky. Along with the wild animals, including snakes, the swamp is deep and hard to get out of. Many have drowned in the water, and mysterious lights have been seen in the forest gliding over the water. Hunters have even lost bears and deers, claiming they disappeared without a trace. The most famous tale from the swamp, however, is that of two Native American lovers. The woman passed before they could wed and was buried in the swamp. The man later drowned because he swore he could see his love in a white canoe. Now the pair can reportedly be seen from time to time paddling on Lake Drummond together. It sounds like this swamp holds far more than just a poor couple, and I think I'm okay without knowing.
Number 5. Mariana Trench. In the western part of the Pacific Ocean, just east of the Philippines, lies the deepest part of our planet's oceans, the Mariana Trench. Now this massive crescent-shaped scar in the Earth's crust is 1,500 miles long and reaches a depth of 36,000 feet in a valley named Challenger Deep. The trench is so deep that even if you drop the entirety of Mount Everest into it, the tip of the mountain would still be a mile from the surface. Now James Cameron reached the bottom in the submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the area floor coming in 2020 when the Chinese submersible Fendajuzi made it all the way down. Now because of the sheer size and pressure, only 4 expeditions in total have successfully descended. The Mariana Trench is probably one of the most inaccessible locations on the entire planet for mankind, and because of this we may never know if some unknown species have made it their home. Number 4. Muchu Chhish. Muchu Chhish is a mountain in Pakistan which reaches a staggering 7,453 meters, and to this day the summit has remained unclimbed. In 2003, Bhutan banned all climbing, but some expeditions have been able to obtain permits. In 2014, English mountaineer Pete Thompson attempted to scale the mountain, hoping to reach the summit. Thompson expected to have climbed the final 1,453 meters without ropes, but the presence of hard ice derailed his plan to reach the top, forcing him to turn back at the 6,000 meter mark. Now prior to Thompson's attempt, a Spanish team was rumored made it all the way to 6,650 meters and remains the highest point on the mountain anyone has reached. Only a handful of attempts have been made to reach the summit, and none have been successful. Muchu Chhish is one of the tallest mountains on Earth that remains unclimbed, and it's the tallest one of all that is not off limits due to religious or political prohibitions. Number 3. Cape Melville. The Lost World of Cape Melville is an Australian headland that had been cut off from exploration by a surrounding wall made of boulders of granite that are hundreds of feet tall. While they've effectively protected its internal rainforest habitat, it also means that the area is virtually impossible to map. In 2013, Conrad Hoskin from James Cook University and a National Geographic film crew were dropped by helicopter onto the rugged Cape Melville mountain range on Cape York Peninsula earlier this year and were amazed at finding new species of animals. Now the virtually impassable mountain range is home to millions of black granite boulders the size of cars and houses, piled hundreds of meters high, eroded in places after being thrust up through the earth millions of years ago. Number 2. Point Nemo. A pole of inaccessibility with respect to a geographical creation of inaccessibility marks a location that is the most challenging to reach. In plain terms, it often refers to the most distant point from the coastline. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility, known as Point Nemo, is the place in the ocean that is furthest from land. land. The area is so remote that with any location more than 400 kilometers, 250 miles from an inhabited area, sometimes the closest human beings are astronauts aboard the International Space Station when it passes overhead. Point Nemo is relatively lifeless. Its location within the South Pacific Gyre blocks nutrients from reaching the area, and being so far from land, it gets little nutrient runoff from coastal waters. I would not want to find myself here. And coming in at number 1 is Gangkhar Puensum. Considering the world's tallest unclimbed mountain by many, Gangkhar Puensum's peak has never been scaled, and it's unlikely that anyone will if the government has anything to say about it. The peaks of Gangkhar Puensum are sacred to the people of Bhutan, and it's considered extremely taboo for anyone to attempt to scale its slopes and peaks. But ordinance and taboos can't stop everyone, and since part of the mountain extends across the Chinese border, the first and only attempt to assail it was led by a Japanese climbing team in 1998. They were stopped short of their goal to explore the uncharted mountain by politically fueled outrage from Bhutan. Since then, no one else has tried to climb it, and I don't blame them.